right, so now we're moving on to lesson 108, which is fractional percent. So just because we have a percent doesn't mean we can't also have a fraction as a percent. So we're going to look at how we work with those today, and they will come up frequently in word problems and stuff because, you know, math people are jerks. So they like to include concepts that push you and make you think a little bit harder, makes them feel better about themselves. But anywho, so here are some examples. We have 4.2%, we have 0.05 of a percent, we have 4.5%, and we have 0.03%, okay? And so one thing I'd like to point out is that some of these percents are greater than 1 and some of them are not. So just remember that some of these values are not even yet 1% of whatever we're going to be looking at. But how would we work with these numbers is first what I want to go over. So we know when we are given a percent, we can't just use the percent to calculate something. We have to turn it into a decimal, right? So we are going to have to convert all of these numbers into decimals to be able to work with them. So the first one's actually quite easy because you know that a percent, to turn a percent into a decimal, we just divide by 100. When we divide by 100, or a power of 10, we move the decimal 2 place values or 2 swoops for every 0 in the number. So if we're going to divide by 100, we have 2 zeros in 100, so we're going to swoop twice. So we go 1, 2, or we move it 2 place values. Now, if there's an empty place value, we fill that in with a 0. If you were asked to find 4.2% of something, you would divide by 100, move the decimal place 2 spots, and then multiply by 0.042 or 42 thousandths, okay? Now, for 0.05%, we still have to do the same thing. We have to move the decimal 2 spots because we're dividing, the number is going to get smaller. So we're going to go 1, 2. Again, we have an empty place value or swoop, so we're going to fill in a 0. And we get 0.0005 or tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 5/10 thousandths, okay? Now 4.5, first, the easiest thing to do is to put this in a decimal, 4.5%, and then move the decimals 2 spots, fill in the empty place value, and we get, oopsie, 45 thousandths. Now, this one's the hardest. To convert this into a decimal, we can either divide 3 by 20 and find the equivalent, but what I'm going to do is I recognize that 20 is a factor of 100, so I know I can multiply top and bottom by 5, so I get 15 over 100%, all right, which means 15 hundredths of a percent, which means, again, 1, 2, so 0.015. So this is 15 thousandths of a percent. So little mini lesson on changing percents into decimals, but just remember, if it's a fraction and that you recognize, just turn it into a decimal. 4.5 was easy from 4.5. 3/20, this denominator could be turned into 100. Anytime we can put a fraction over 100, it means that we can convert it into a decimal very easily. And so I did the same thing here. So let's see how this would apply in a problem or equation that we might encounter. A lot of times there'll be word problems, and the first one is, and it's probably the most disgusting word problem in your whole book. So 108.2 says 4.5% of the students did not brush their teeth every day. I don't think I need to review the importance of brushing your teeth every day, but they didn't. If there were 1,200 students in all, how many did not brush their teeth every day? So let's talk about the information we have. We know 4.5% did not brush their teeth, and we have 1,200, and I'm just going to put ST for students. Now, let's put this in an is of statement. What is 4.5% of 1,200? What is 4.5% of 1,200? Okay, so that's our equation. or that's our sentence that we're going to turn into equation. What is 4.5% of is multiplication 1200? Now we know we just can't multiply 1200 by 4.5 because this is a percent, which means that we need to alter it to a decimal or a fraction, but decimal is what works best for these. So we have 4.5% times 1200, but that's still not enough. We got to drop the percent symbol. And to drop the percent symbol, we need to divide by 100. So we're going to go 1, 2, fill in a 0. We get 0.045 times 1200. I'm not going to do that off the top of my head today. So I'm going to do 1200 times 0.045 equals 54 students. Disgusting. 54 students didn't brush their teeth. Now, I recognize this was just an example in a book, but I've heard that homeschool students, because they just roll out of bed and do whatever, sometimes don't brush their teeth. So don't give us a bad name. Don't give us a bad reputation. Brush your teeth. It's very important. All right. Let me know if you have any questions about this. Your practice problem, it looks like you're just calculating decimals and percents and fractions, so it should not be very difficult, but do expect questions like this to start popping up, and especially that if you've noticed the way that the book is organized, questions 1 through 5 are generally word problems, and so these are going to start popping up, and it looks like you get one at number 8, which if we do odds, you won't have to see. So anyways, this is how you do it. Let me know if you need help.